Meet Mexico's real narcos, cooking up some of the deadliest drugs destined for America.
Están muriendo muchos estadounidenses porque no saben consumirlas.
Heroin cut with fentanyl is causing a fatal overdose crisis across the US.
This epidemic is a national health emergency.
Whilst in Mexico, the drug trade leads to tens of thousands of murders each year.
The two young men shot in the head in the trunk of that car.
So what is this synthetic drug? And how has it become one of the biggest causes of fatal overdoses in the US? Deep in the heart of the Sinaloa mountains, these drug cooks are hard at work, making up the latest product to dominate Mexico's drug market.
Tenemos que estar revolviendo porque se pega también abajo.
Luis is making synthetic heroin. This batch is destined for New York.
They're cooking raw opium with acetone and alcohol, and he's boiled it for 20 minutes, and the reaction is like an oily solution.
A former cattle farmer, Luis has been a cartel cook for 8 years. He would only speak to us if we disguise his identity.
Tenemos que sacar la pureza de la goma de opio para que aumente con fentanil, pues la vamos a revolver, la vamos a mezclar.
Fentanyl is a powerful synthetic opioid that is up to 50 times stronger than heroin. A 3 milligram dose of fentanyl is enough to kill an adult man. That's less than a pinch of salt. It would take around 10 times as much heroin to kill a person.
Precaución, se puede vestir por favor porque vamos a empezar a echar la porción de fentanil por favor.
Sí, ya.
I have to wear this suit to protect myself from the chemical fumes. A little bit, and it can kill you.
Prepara la prensa, lo voy a poner como colador.
¿Y tú qué piensas de que se estén muriendo muchos americanos a raíz de este producto?
Están muriendo muchos estadounidenses porque no saben consumirla. Mucha gente se engambusina y como va muy fuerte, en el mismo instante los ataca. Pues mientras que ellos nos estén comprando, nosotros vamos a seguir produciendo.
Cartels are using fentanyl because it's cheaper to use than raw opium and produces a stronger drug. But many users don't know fentanyl is going into their drugs and how potent it is. In the US, approximately 68,000 people died of drug overdoses in 2018, and around 31,000 died from synthetic opioid overdoses. This includes substances like fentanyl. This mountain kitchen may look amateur, but it cost around $50,000 to set up. With overheads like that, you need backing, and in this part of Mexico, that comes from the Sinaloa cartel. They control everything around here. They're even monitoring the radio, warning the cooks if the authorities are nearby.
Sí, está todo controlado ahorita.
Y por el aire, si viene alguien por arriba.
De ahora nos avisan.
Around here, making a living is about supply and demand, and the US dictates much of what is produced. In the mountains of Sinaloa, the fields once grew thick with marijuana plants. But the legalization of cannabis in the United States had a huge impact in Mexico. Americans prefer their homegrown plants, so Mexico has shifted to producing other drugs.
¿Qué es lo que ha pasado con el negocio?
Con la mota se ha ido devaluando. Aparte hay muchos cocineros que hacen cristal y todo ese rollo.
This former wheat farmer's friend says a kilo of marijuana used to cost $55. Now it costs $20. And despite the drop in price, it's harder to sell. As the cartel's revenue from marijuana has decreased, they have looked for opportunities elsewhere. The rise of synthetic heroin is part of the third wave of Mexico's drug story. In the 1980s, Mexico was the largest marijuana supplier to America. This highly profitable business created the Mexican cartels and a wave of violence. In the 90s and through the early noughties, cocaine took over and the Sinaloa cartel rose to prominence with Joaquin El Chapo Guzman in charge. But in the last decade, the cartels have concentrated their business on chemical-based drugs as they are cheap to produce and increasingly in demand in the States. And where there's drugs, there is inevitably violence and death.
The two young men shot in the head in the trunk of that car. They are now part of the tens of thousands of people that get killed every year in Mexico because of the drug business.
Local journalist Ernesto Martinez sees this a lot.
Ha estado tranquilón, pero de repente empieza a haber trabajo como ahorita, que ya empezamos con 2. También hubo en días pasados una rachita que hubo como 3 o 4 en un día.
There were around 30,000 murders in Mexico in 2018, a record-breaking high for the second year running. Many of these killings are linked to drugs and organized crime. Back in the city, Luis, the Sinaloa mountain cook, is packing the product for export to the United States. He knows too well the reality of the situation.
Cuando entró fentanil, pues, se puso más cabrón. Ha habido más demanda y se ha visto más violencia porque ha matado a mucha gente.
¿Por qué? Porque el negocio del fentanil deja mucho dinero.
Deja más dinero, es poca inversión y deja más ganancia.
Donald Trump has repeatedly claimed that a border war with Mexico would help stop the flow of drugs into the United States. But the DEA has found that most drugs, including heroin and fentanyl, are being smuggled in from Mexico through legal ports of entry. For Luis, a bigger wall wouldn't stop business.
Nunca se va a acabar esto. Si a nosotros no le mandamos para allá, ellos nos van a venir a buscarnos hasta acá, hasta Sinaloa, para que vayamos a les hagamos. Ellos mismos van a tomar el muro.
It's a decades-long crisis that shows no sign of abating. In the end, it comes down to simple economics.
El futuro, mientras que haya comprado nunca se va a acabar esto. Pues mientras que ellos nos estén comprando, nosotros vamos a seguir produciendo.